going to start class a little bit differently. We've had this time-honored tradition at Buddha Eye Temple where we'd go around the room and say our names. But our room is a little bit cosmic right now and multi-dimensional. So the plan is, and well, really the idea of this is to kind of create more of a connection between those on the screen whom I can all look at and wave to and see, have conversation with throughout the class, and folks who are here in person at the temple. And so, I think, oh, you just got all focused up, didn't you, Joichi? Could you pan the camera and put it on our three lovely in-present attendees? Hello, those of you just joining. So basically, for the folks in the hall, we'll just say our name, and then the way we do this at Buddha Eye is everyone just repeats the name. And so we'll do that with the 5 of us in the hall, and once we're finished, online, we'll do what we call popcorning it. So you will just chime in and say your name, and if you start going in over each other, someone back off and someone go forward, and we can make it happen. Oh, we got another one coming. All right, so Mandy, I saw you just joined. Hi. We're going to go around quickly and say our names. You can go last probably, and I think it'll make sense to you by the time it gets to you. So my name is Genjo. Genjo. Wendy. Holly. Ciara. Joichi. Cameraman. So now we'll... Daniel. Kyle. Louise. Sam. Pam. Sarah. Shadow. Dave. Arya. James. Oh. I think we got James and Rachel. Everyone. Mandy. All right. Well, I think I can understand. Is anyone else still speaking? Oh, I think I'm just hearing feedback from myself. I guess everyone should probably mute themselves. So it seems like we've discovered why maybe we don't do that with a 50-person assembly. It's pretty rough. I might retool or rethink how we can do that in future. But in any case, we're all here together, and that's nice. There's a story, famous story in the Buddhist pantheon of the Buddha and one of his attendants, his closest attendant, and his closest attendant has this moment. His name is Ananda. And Ananda's like, Buddha, I just had this great realization. My spiritual friends and being in community must be just like almost half of the entire spiritual life. And the Buddha says, oh, Ananda, do not say such a thing. It is the entirety of the spiritual life. So, that's nice. But so don't underestimate having good spiritual friends. It's so important. So. And that'll look different when you're in the grip of a global pandemic. So we'll do the best we can. All right, so a few nuts and bolts. We have a few people who are new to this class joining in, and we decided on sort of a format for how we'll do questions in this class, just sort of to all be on the same page. And as we're going forward, and this is a teacher-fronted class, so I'll be doing kind of, lecturing or speaking at you for some time. If you have clarifying questions, feel free to just ask those straight away in the moment, and we'll attend to them, because likely if you have that question, someone else also does. And if it's broaching into kind of speculation and I don't know, going somewhere that I'm going to go to later, I'll tell you to holster that question and we'll make sure we attend to it by the end of the class. And also, there's a text that we have. We have copies here. I think everyone in the room right now definitely has a copy of it. And if you didn't get one of those and you're new to the class, shoot me an email and I'll make sure you get one. I think that's it. So I guess we'll dive in, starting with kind of the homework. And my intention is to make this section a bit shorter than last time. I think last time when we opened up with questions, we just chatted for a good third of the class, and there's quite a bit I want to get to today. But any people want to start us off with reflections on the 6 realms and the wheel of life? I don't know how well people can see that online, but we have a different representation of the wheel than you all have. I don't know if people did a quick Google search of the wheel of life, but there are just hundreds and hundreds of these things, from modern to ancient, depicting these 6 realms and how they interact in different ways. So yeah, I open the floor and I'll keep an eye on the clock. It looks like Louise and then Pam.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Genjo, I was a little unclear about how to think about the wheel of life. Was it a real place? We're trying to represent real places or representing a state of mind? And I was really happy to find in this article that you linked us to, this paper, that actually clarified that for me really well. That the different worlds, each is, there are places in which we can be reborn, but each is also the expression of a state of mind. So the 6 realms represent psychological states that we experience here and now in this life. And I just wanted to thank you for including that. That really helped me a lot.
Great. By the way, what was that? I totally forgot what I linked. Who was it?
Oh, I'd have to go back and look, but you said, let me see, I'll find it.
Oh, it's not so important.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's, I think we can get hung up really easily on the idea and the concept and, the very profound truth for many Buddhists in the world of physical, corporeal rebirth in these realms. And I think, that's a really potent question for many Buddhists, and for many, I would say, especially Western Buddhists, it's not such a potent question. It feels a little out there and disconnected from my belief systems. That getting hung up on that can prevent us from doing real, tangible work on our psyche and our heart, kind of here now in this human body.
This was from the article you sent from the Manchester Buddhist Center.
Oh, yes. Now I remember.
Yeah, it was a longer piece, but you focused us towards those 3 pages, and I just found it, all those 3 pages really useful for me, the way I think about things. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Pam?
I hope I'm not cutting out. My internet seems to be a little flaky tonight. I found the wheel really useful and really started to have a lot of thoughts about those different stages of the psyche. Although I have to admit that I am finding Yama holding it to be really sort of, I guess, a little off-putting and scary. I like the wheel, and I'm not loving the Yama, and I'm sure there's something going on there. I'm trying to comprehend the anger. These weren't something around him.
Yeah, I'll get to this later, but I can give you a very quick answer. Yama is just a representative of impermanence. And the fact that looks really frightening to beings who want to be stable and have an agenda. And I think that's kind of where some of that fierceness is coming from. Does that touch on? Okay, you got a thumbs up. We'll play into more of the features. There are a few parts of this wheel that I didn't mention, and some that aren't pictured in the image that many of you are working with. That'll, sort of unfold a couple other layers too. So we'll get there. Maybe time for one more? Okay, well maybe we'll plow ahead. So my hope today and for tonight's class is to build more flesh on this wheel of life and also flow into some new material. And of course, please ask clarifying questions. I'm really going to start from the bottom up, starting with anicca and anatta. And so hopefully this can be a time for us to iron out any unclarities or murkiness that might be there in your thinking. Yeah, and I hope we'll have a good amount of time for questions at the end. I think the things that I'll offer tonight will hopefully open up kind of a spring of questions. I guess that's every teacher's goal, but it's mine tonight. So, from the starting point, class 1, we talked about these kind of baseline realities, the laws that underpin all of Buddhist thought and practice. And those are anicca and anatta. Anicca is impermanence, anatta is no self. So no self, right? There's no solid, separate, single self. No being that can have a permanent view of anything. And I am who I am because of everything else in the world. So we can know this on a very large, objective sense, kind of the sciences that we can use to think about this, through the sociology, the socioeconomic situation that I was in growing up, biology, history, all these things have flowed in to make me who I am today. But also, it's there on a moment-to-moment kind of happenings of any situation, that there's no static place. There's a monastery up north of here, and their kind of constant mantra is no stuck place. Even if it feels stuck, even if it looks stuck, start just hanging out with it, and you will watch that murkiness tends to have a flow, that has a pattern, it has definite particles, it might even have a color on it, right? There's specific movements of life that we cannot separate ourselves from, and those deeply inform who we are. And of course, everyone knows this quote by Carl Sagan that's really famous. To build an apple pie from scratch, to cook an apple pie from scratch, first you must invent the universe, right? There are these natural, big flows in time that we are situated in and cannot escape. So in impermanence, really, nothing stays put. And like Pam was mentioning, Yama, why does that look frightening? Well, we had talked about this idea of a stable self. When everything is impermanent, that doesn't look good. The thing you want, if you fight so hard for it and you finally get it, well, it's gonna disappear, or you're gonna disappear, one or the other. And I was really enjoying, I found a definition online that I had some fun with, that all compounded phenomena disintegrate. All compounded phenomena disintegrate. And I really like playing with those words. Like of the compassion, to suffer with is compassion, and compound. Things, I get this image of like things just kind of smushed on each other, kind of kneaded together, right? Anything that seems to come together in our experience will disintegrate, right? It had an integration there, and that's going to come apart. That's going to disintegrate, right? And so impermanence is also a way to describe how things are, and no self is a way to describe how things are not. Say that again. There's a little bit, it's kind of like, I had to look at it a couple times. That impermanence is describing what things are. If you could say there's a core to anything, you could say that it's gonna fall apart. That's what you can definitely say about it. And what things are not is sort of just the shape they appear. They're not just that. They're also going to fall apart. Or we can also think of impermanence as emptiness through time, and no self as emptiness in space. So I'm seeing a number of blank looks. I'm sort of feeling it myself. If that's helpful to you, you can hold on to those words. If not, you can totally eject that. That's fine. All right. So those are the kind of baseline situation of human life and existence. And actually, those form the the first two parts of a really fundamental teaching in Buddhism called the Four Seals of the Law. People might have stumbled across these in the text we are reading by Kyogen Carlson. The Four Seals of the Law are both of those, anicca and anatta, as well as dukkha, which is roughly, we often hear translated as suffering, there's quite a bit more there, and then nirvana. So these are the four things that are needed to kind of be present in order for any sort of teaching to be considered Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. Those are the four aspects. If those four aspects are lacking, then we could say it's good, we could say it's nice, but people who are concerned if it's the Buddha's teachings, they'll say no, it's not Buddha's teachings. And so this dukkha, we're going to be getting familiar with that word. You'll often hear it translated as life is suffering. It's said to be the first of the Four Noble Truths. We'll get to Four Noble Truths later. But life is suffering. That's kind of a brutal way to open up your religion. But really, you could translate that as all conditioned selves or phenomena are unsatisfactory and painful. I'll read that again. All conditioned or created, that could be another word, or compounded or changing selves or phenomena are unsatisfactory and painful. So we can draw that into this life. I don't know, the way I can relate to this most clearly when I say those words is through a meditation retreat. Here we'll sit quietly for 8 or 9 hours through the day, and I will pretty viscerally feel all of these realms. And there's almost nothing happening in my objective world. We're just sitting, we're eating, sleeping, walking a little bit. Depending on the retreat, we might work a little bit. And we're sitting quietly. These are the kind of life has become stripped down to its utmost bare bones, and yet somehow these all seem to keep turning within me. And that can be a little harder to discern if you're going around through life and you eat a cookie and you blast up into the heavenly realms. But in any way, these places, these experiences of life are constantly coming and going. And to ourselves, to our beings, that's really frightening. It's frustrating that the world can't stay put and we can't pick an agenda and have a course and just figure it out. Can't figure it out. And so we'll pause on that. We'll have more in dukkha later. But nirvana, this is a word everyone has also heard of, likely, can also be translated as liberation or freedom, and how it's colloquially talked about. And is tranquil. So we'll bracket that for now. For the first 3 classes of this teaching series, I thought we'd really just stick with suffering. We'll get more on path towards the end of this class and translate, but we'll hang out with the suffering. So those are the 4 seals of the law, once again, and those are the ways that you can recognize Buddhist teaching: anicca, anatta, dukkha, and nirvana. So let's really apply those to the wheel, and specifically we'll start working a little bit more with this imagery. And this would be a good time if you have a wheel of life in front of you to pull it out and be looking along. We have a couple of those paper copies in class if you don't have it. And then Joichi will put into the chat bar, I think it's called, where everyone can just click a link and that'll pop up, and I don't know, you could have it side by side or just be looking at that.
The question that came up for me is, in the 6 realms, is it intended to always go in that order? Or does you jump around, jump from, doing?
I think there's various thought about that. My experience is it goes lots of places, but I also don't think I have a very fine-tuned radar. But further, there's lots of different. You could see actually that this wheel of life is different from yours.
Right.
So there's conflicting opinion on which realms could go there. But we can definitely say that always the human realm, the heavenly beings realm, and the Ashura realm, they're always on the top. And the hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, and what's the other one? Animal realm are always on the bottom. So do people feel ready with a copy of a Wheel of Life in front of them? Or if you have one you're particularly fond of on a Google search, you could grab that one. So first off, as Pam brought up, Yama and the mirror. So Yama, I think there's a story. Most of these Wheels of Life come to us from Tibetan Buddhism, actually. It seems like there was once a thriving culture of this wheel within ancient India and early Buddhist history. However, that all seems to, it was destroyed one way or another. That all fell apart. I'm not really familiar with that history. But this Lord Yama, I think the one story I read was that he said, I will spend 50 years in a cave, and on the 50th year, I will become enlightened. And someone came and murdered him like a day before it happened. Really intense, right? And so he was chosen to hold that mirror. And I don't know, what order that came in, but really impermanence, right? If you think it's going to happen later, you're in trouble, right? The action of waking up is now. And so he was a ripe candidate to be the person holding the mirror. And so Yama is representing that no self and anicca. And also, I think we could say the mirror is too. The mirror is also representing that. And maybe in a way, the mirror is sort of gaining more of its identity and kind of flavor of that by Yama holding it. He's there signifying that the mirror is really this impermanence and anicca. Anicca and anatta. So he's there. Those are all there together. In the 6 realms, they correspond to dukkha. The 6 realms are completely related to this dis-ease, this suffering. The various translations for the word dukkha are suffering, which is one I don't really like. It's too acute. And actually, when I'm enjoying many aspects of life with great joy and vigor, I don't feel suffering. It doesn't connect with me. But anxiety, I'm actually enjoying that one quite a bit right now. So even when something's going really good, hanging out with my friends, there kind of is this subtle churning and pushing and ooh, let's keep this going. Let's keep this going. There's a slight dis-ease there, even present when there are things I'm really enjoying. And also unsatisfactoriness, which I always bring up that's very unsatisfactory to say. But unsatisfactoriness, that in each of these realms, these are places where there's a, you could say, modality or framework of viewing or imaging the world that's designed to be escaping from impermanence and no self, and giving rise to this feeling of running from something, this feeling of running. Aha, I'm in the human realm. I can make all these to-do lists and plans and bang the world in this right shape. Then we'll all be okay. We'll all be okay. The heavenly God's realm. It's so far away. I'm so disconnected from all this. I don't really need to attend to anything. The Ashura Realm. I have the right view. I have the power to make this happen. I am righteous in this way, and I will inflict those views upon the world, and then we'll all get it. We'll all get it right. The animal realm, just very base pleasure situation, once I eat this pizza, my life will be good. If I could just, rest enough, life would be good. If I could just get those 8 hours, all my problems will be solved. The hell realm. This one is actually, I think, really interesting and a little bit different from all the rest. I've been thinking of this wheel of life a little bit more like a water wheel. So it's going around and around and around, and it connects with what we're going to call here the water. And that watering is anicca and anatta. And as soon as you're fighting against that anicca and anatta, it gets the wheel going. And the more strongly you are opposed to anicca and anatta, it becomes more like gears, right? It becomes, the force of that becomes very, very strong. Or if we are just lightly connected or disconnected or pushing against anicca and anatta, we could, within our own experience, very softly feel the changes of these perspectives. My entrance into these realms is very soft, and I watch them, and I can attend to them in a different way. right? There's degrees there. And I think this hell realm, Edo and I were talking about this today. He said, there's a reason that you're getting hacked to bits in the hell realm. There's a reason you're getting hacked to bits in the hell realm. It's because we're really set on having a view of something. We're set on knowing how to do something. And so we become shut off. We become really solid and stagnant in a certain kind of way. And we try to hold on to that as long as we can, until it breaks down. And the breaking down of it, the very immediate breaking down of it, is in the hell realm. You lose all agency. And in every wheel of life, further, the hell realm is definitely on the bottom. That one doesn't move around. These two guys up above them, they'll kind of like switch sides and move around, but the hell realm is always right on the bottom. It's the place of really having lost all agency and feeling that view. I mean, one way we could think of it is feeling any view we have just fall apart, and we've lost all power to control it. So I don't know, a place that comes for me is, I was thinking about this, a place I really connected with the hell realm and spent time there was when a significant other of mine left me. This way that I had created, I almost think of a branch. You know when you see like a branch that's grown up through a fence, like a chain link fence, and it's kind of like woven through it in this really beautiful way? It's like that had to be torn apart. So in my relationship with this person, my identity was so intermingled with this person. And when they left, I was just kind of ripped apart. And I had to reintegrate, and I kept trying to find the sense of who I was without this person, but that identity hadn't been created yet, and really felt the acute suffering of not being a cohesive being anymore. So there might be many other ideas about hell realms and experiences of that, but that was one for me. So we'll move on from talking about the 6 realms, and we'll talk about the Nirvana portion of those 4 seals of the law. So right, we just talked about dukkha, these are the 6 realms, applies here, the anicca and anatta, that applies to Yama in the mirror, and then the awakening. So I don't know if folks can see on this image, or if anyone's Googled other images of the Wheel of Life, but it's very common to have a Buddha in the top right corner. Right? There's also a Buddha who's in each of the realms, who's offering medicine for that particular place, but there's also a Buddha outside of it. And that's, I think, it's really significant for what Buddhist practice is pointing to. And we'll parse this out further in the teachings, but awakening is both inside this realm, and it's these realms, these places, these views, and it's also outside. And the Buddha on the outside is often pointing to a moon. And a moon is a symbol of awakening. I don't know how cultural that is, but I think it's pretty standard throughout Buddhism in general, across cultures, that the moon, the full moon in the sky, is always shining, and it's just obscured by clouds. So, or sometimes the earth. I don't know how many people saw the, what's it called when the sun's here and the earth's here? The eclipse, there it is. So sometimes the earth's in the way, and that's pretty cool. But mostly, the clouds are just covering the moon. And so the idea that awakening and liberation and nirvana is totally here, it's present throughout, and yet it's just covered by clouds. It's just covered by clouds. And we have to do the work to see through those clouds, dissipate those clouds. You know, it's difficult to say exactly what the action is. Realize there are no clouds. You know, it gets a little technical there. So those are aspects of nirvana that are in this painting. Does that make sense? Any clarifying questions in there? And my hope here is to really just show how central this painting, this picture, this image, really corresponds with fundamental Buddhist teaching. Yeah, good. I will call your silence agreement. So, maybe to now broaden the image of this wheel, and I'll just I have a few thoughts in here, and not any particular order, on how we can be using this wheel in a day-to-day way. Where do we go here? So as Louise mentioned, there's a nice piece that talks about how we can view the realms and the wheel of life, and we could think of them as physical places, we could think of them as psychological states and experiences, and metaphors for our spirit, what have you. And also I think this is just a fabulous tool for reflection. And that word reflection is really important in there. I looked up some of the etymology of it, and it's from a Latin word that means to bend back. To bend back. So I don't know how often, for example, I'll be driving on the road and I'll think life's great and everything's fine, and someone cuts me off. I feel like this kind of surge of anger, this little bit of frustration, and I didn't realize that I was carrying that around with me, and I can just think that's me and this person, and that person's a jerk, and that's a static situation, but I can be like, oh, I'm in an Ashura realm. I've just been shot there like that. And I find that even that small mental heuristic, that tool, can really give me some distance to say, oh, how do I feel about that? Is this worth pouring my energy into? And it can be a nice tool to just shake things up a bit. So it can be just a way, just something we sort of carry in our pocket, that we can recognize the world. We can be re-imaging the world as impressions and emotions are coming to us. And another way we can see it is that this mirror can be really an allegory of how we actually see the world, like moment by moment. Moment by moment, we aren't seeing all 6 of these realms. When you look in the mirror, you're just seeing you. You're just seeing you. So that moment you're transported to the Ashura realm. You can be developing this ability, this kind of insighting, this way of insighting, where you're constantly having a kind of connection with the objects of your life, with the directions of your desires, and you're noticing on a more and more subtle level what realm you are living in. You can start to develop a relationship with the patterns and the realms you tend to hang out in. So we can begin to see with an eye of reflection, and then once we start to see that with an eye of reflection and realizing what kind of place we're in, we can also start to seek out the Buddha in that realm. So actually, I was going to mention this later, but homework I want to offer everyone, it's an invitation. Discern at some point when you're in a particular realm, whatever that means to you, I won't elaborate on that. And once you've done that, try and directly offer the medicine. Try and just say it verbally. I actually did this. We were sitting meditation, and I kept noticing these thoughts coming up that I was like, ooh, and that's a good thing to say. That'll be a good, ooh, make sure you mention that. And do it in this particular way. And finally, I was just like, oh, Genjo, you really want to do well tonight, and you want to offer people something valuable, and you want to be seen positively. And a part of me just was like, yeah. It's like, yeah, I do want that. And it became quiet. It became quiet very, very immediately. And it took no kind of corralling or moralizing. It just took a simple looking to the belly of that being, and it could open. And a few more popped up again and there, but really the kind of main overtures had ended. So I'll mention that homework again at the end of class. And so in this place, if you're starting to view the world like this, you're tapping into the very fundamental Buddhist idea that reality is a perfect blend and flow of materiality and heart. It's kind of a wild idea. We're tending to think, I'm over here, things are over there, I can arouse certain mind states and energies and meet the world. But that actually, moment by moment, the heart that we're exhibiting and the objects of our awareness are merging together. That's the modality of life. And so, how do I put that? Yeah, I like that. Flow of materiality and heart.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So reality is a perfectly blended flow of materiality and heart. And actually, if you're hanging around and listening to talks at this temple, our teacher will often, that idea is often referred to as mind. It's like people might say capital M mind, to kind of say that this is the full soup of being that we inhabit all the time. So in the entire world, throughout our day-to-day, each thing is revealing us to ourself at that moment. There's kind of an ongoing revelation of experience that we can tune into, that we can become aware of. And I gotta save that response because people are always asking me, on our altar, there's a mirror. It's a silvered mirror, so it's actually, I don't know how you make mirrors in the modern world, but I know in the ancient world, one way was to take a piece of silver and just sort of shine the bejesus out of it and buff it up, and that'll give you an image back. So, and there, it's sitting right under the Buddha. If any of you come to the temple someday, you can go take a look. But I think that's beautiful. I think that's the kind of invitation that this tool is offering us. That not only just using it as a conceptual tool, but a real modality of living and buying into that. So I'll give a few further examples. I'm curious how this will land for many people. I'm sort of nerding out a bit about alchemy these days. I don't know if anyone has ever looked into anything about alchemy. I think we've often heard the stories that alchemy was kind of a very mistaken science where rich people paid kind of quack scientists to try and make gold or the elixir of life. But funnily enough, or in a much more interesting way, it turns out that it was like kind of a profound spiritual discipline that people were undertaking. It was a metaphor for psychological activity and or a kind of further way to explore spiritual engagement. So I was listening to one of my favorite authors last night. His name is James Hillman, and he said a few quotes that were like, bam, this is exactly what I feel like this mirror is calling us to. And so he said, the work of alchemy is to release the soul where it is captured. The work of alchemy is to release the soul where it is captured. And so I don't feel the need to kind of unwrap that term soul. Many Buddhists would get in an argument with me about that because there's no self. How is there a soul? That's not my point. I think the point here is the deeper yearnings of our heart, the kind of umph of our life. Where is it captured? So I think only you can answer that. And this realm is pointing to a couple of places that might be captured. Where is your soul captured? And where do you feel that? Where do you know that and run into that again and again on a daily experiential way? So he said, also through alchemy, we are restoring animation to the physical world and imagining the personal world as more objective. So I'll unpack those a bit further. Restoring animation to the physical world. This for me is pointing out that each thing and how you relate with it is revealing to you your own heart. So a favorite example I have of this is if you're hanging out with someone and they set the cup down like that. And you might go, oh, that's kind of intense. We're revealing our heart all the time, actually, by how we move around. And that's why I think also you can encounter someone in the world and feel attracted to them. You're just like, whoa, they're exhibiting their heart all the time. Or you can run into someone who you are repelled from. And sometimes you don't even know why, right? Someone will just say, hey, how's it going? And you'll be like, ugh. And you won't even know what's going on with you, but there's a felt sense something there that is really important, And so it's so easy to walk around with the idea that there are just static objects and I'm separate from them. But really, I think this invitation of Buddhism at whole and this idea of the mirror and the world as being a place of exploration and invitation, it's pointing at an animation of the physical world that we're usually unwilling to enter. And it's very contrary to a consumerist society, right? Very contrary. So that next statement, imagining the personal world as more objective. Imagining the personal world as more objective. how I relate with that is oftentimes people will chalk up bad habits to personality. Be like, oh, that's just my personality, you know? And, you know, that's fine. That's totally fine. For me, I want to interrogate those parts of myself and learn if they're helpful, if they really have to stay there or not. I think acceptance of certain things in ourselves is good, but when those habits end up hurting other people, I think it's worth talking to them a little bit and seeing if they have to stick around. And in a way, that word objective, I really appreciate how the wheel says this is on top and this is on the bottom. And it also says they're interlinked with each other. I don't know, did anyone watch that video, that TED Talk I posted? Can I get a show of hands just to see? Oh, great. So I thought it did a beautiful job. And I don't know if you watched that with the idea of the wheel in mind, that's what I was doing when I watched it. And it just made very clear in a certain kind of way that we could say our world kind of hinges on these polarities, both in maybe a daily experiential way and also on kind of a grand, more grand historical way of thirst for power and ease and comfort and having your worldview be celebrated, and the deep brokenness of human life that can occur when, what would be the right way to say that? When you have absence of love and what you need in your life, right? We have terms like addiction. We know that Native communities in the U.S. and other places in the world have incredibly high rates of suicide, depression, alcoholism, incarceration, right? When your whole way of life is destroyed, your worldview is denied to you. Things in the human heart tend to break in a way, and we could say that those beings have been hurt in a deeply significant way that can lend them to ending up in more of these realms than a higher, another segment of the population. But anywho, that's getting a little off topic. So all that to say that there's something objective about our personal world that we can sometimes just wrap it up and say like, well, it's subjective, It's just I'm hanging out in the Ashura world, and that's totally disconnected from other happenings in my life. But if you start to look deeply, the way you move through your subjective realm, and actually maybe you don't even need to look that deeply, the way you move through your subjective realm totally matters. It totally matters. And to take that a kind of seriousness to those places, I think is really important. I think also something interesting here, and just a little note, and this can be an allegory for Buddhist practice, I'd say. So the work of alchemy is to release the soul from where it is captured. Apparently there are many, I think they're just like, I really don't know how many, but he said hundreds of these alchemy manuals that people would write, and they would all argue about what is the best starting material. What is the real starting material? And he said many people just say, oh, that means alchemists have no idea what they're doing. But in another sense, you could say, oh, they're each finding their own unique pain or difficulty in the world and starting with that as the primary material of transforming their life. And so he gave some examples of these, which were really fun. Fun. But one was called, and this is what he all said this in Latin, and it translates to slime of the small world. And he described that as petty, like the ongoing diatribe of petty things you're connected to. He said that could be a real vibrant place in your life where you're like, why is this here? And how do I talk with it? And how do I transform it? A couple other ones were the virgin's milk. Virgin's milk could be your starting primary material for transformation. And he said that is your willingness to just be innocent about things and not take up a stance of actually knowing. So that could be something we rely on again and again that zaps us from a certain kind of vitality that we're looking to have in our life. He said another one is ashes, coal, pitch, and lead. And so this, we could think about those as the dark, difficult heavy things in life, those kinds of immovable pains in our life, that could be a place where we start entering this reflective work. Another one, it was called the venom that was meant to kill the king. The venom that was meant to kill the king. And that, he talked about that as what for me was archetypal kind of Ashura energy, that there's a system and it's messing up the world and we need to take it down. And if we do that, the world will be okay. So all that to say, I really invite you to think creatively and honestly about the different troubles in your life. That word suffering can be very misleading, but there's all sorts of currents of anxiousness that live in us that we let guide our eyes and our hands throughout our life, that we can start to have a conversation with and undo very, very directly. So thank you for indulging my fancy alchemy right now. Okay, we're on to the next bit. I feel like a little bit in a Buddhist game show doing this. We have the Four Noble Truths. You win. You see okay? Okay. So I'll go into these pretty, straightforwardly, and then we'll probably relate them back to the wheel like we're doing with everything. So this was actually the first sermon or teaching the Buddha gave after waking up. It was said that he would, for many years he practiced asceticism. So he was trying to break his physical body, basically. The idea was, if I just crush my physicality, crush all of my desire, that will lead to liberation. At some point he was given an offering when he was mistaken for a tree god. Very beautiful story. And he received that offering. And also that's fun in thinking about the mirror, that the Buddha can appear like lots of things to people, even a tree god, even, I don't know what other things he could appear as, but anywho, I'll let you think about that. So he received that milk and decided to go, he decided that asceticism wasn't the way, and he woke up, and then afterwards he went and he found his friends who he had practiced those practices with for many years, and he taught this teaching. And so the Noble Truths, we'll start there. There are 4 of them. And the translation is a little bit more in the actual Pali that we have, that it's the 4 truths of the noble ones. So that's something we can be thinking of, is, are they noble in themselves, or are they the kind of ways that people who are noble, or people who have integrity, or people who are sincere, that those are the truths that they live and sort of inhabit. So we have here suffering, and this word is dukkha. The Pali word is dukkha, which is often, in many Buddhist circles, just kept as, we just call it dukkha, because it carries so many connotations. And like I said, that word can be described as anxiousness, anxiety, and what else do we have? Unsatisfactoriness, dis-ease. So next, he said, and there's an arising of suffering. So sometimes that's referred to as the cause of suffering, but really people just jump to the point and say it's craving. That's the cause of suffering. So I have those both there. Tanha there. And those point back to the cock, the hog, and the snake. The 3, this craving is really talked about as greed, hate, and delusion. So right, these are the things that give rise to suffering. Then we have the 3rd noble truth is cessation, or what you'll hear talked about as nirvana, or awakening. And the word actually is nirodha, that's used kind of in this formation. And it means something like to go out, to put out, or to be extinguished. Right? And then 4th, path, or marga. So there's a way to bring about this cessation. So you see I drew these little circles here. You can see that they're related. These things give rise to each other. And And this was actually a common way to diagnose and treat diseases by the medical community. And I think I'd read somewhere that this just might have been a well-known kind of formulation for attending to things and trying to change them in that time. And so that harkens back to the idea of Dharma and Buddhist teachings as medicine. So if you're experiencing a lot of suffering in your life, that its direct cause is this craving, is this greed, is this hatred, is this delusion. And if you would like to bring about the cessation of suffering, it's interesting that the word here isn't like just happiness. I think in a lot of modern Buddhism, that's the word that's used, and I enjoy that. But actually, it's really the lessening of suffering. I think that's an important point. That I read somewhere that happiness in a Buddhist sense is just less suffering. The intensities of this wheel, the shooting up into heaven and then the plunging down into hell, that is great suffering that we see in many people, manic depressive situation that we at least all have some familiarity with. That's the apex of suffering. I forgot where I was going with that. Yes, so the lessening of that shoot up to the top and down into the pits of hell. So this path this marga is pointing to what is called the Eightfold Path. And I'll just say, we'll spend another class period talking more in depth about these, but they're called right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. So those aren't attended to so fully in this particular school of Buddhism and Zen. How we'll often refer to path is through three other terms that you're more familiar with if you've been practicing here, and those are generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Generosity, compassion, and wisdom. And those just so happen to correspond perfectly with greed, hatred, and delusion. So for the balm for greed is generosity. And so very root level, if you think you can get things, a great medicine, give some stuff away. You do not have to have a profound metaphysical understanding of the situation. Just loosen up that grip. Loosen up the idea that you need this thing. Let it go. Let it go. And then hatred, compassion. When something difficult arises, something that you really dislike, I don't know any political figures you might have great disdain for and who might trouble you deeply and provoke a lot of anger in you. But for me, actually, if I decide to think about that person's life and the heart they wield on a daily basis, I can feel it just totally shifts my world. Wow, they live with that. I have to experience it. It gets inflicted on me, but mostly I can get away from it. I don't have to live in that. That person lives in that mind, right? That heart is theirs, that they're receiving all those consequences and that pain all the time. So that compassion is something that undoes a being's hate. And then wisdom, corresponding to delusion. And I'll share one quick thing about that delusion. That's the one I've always had the most trouble with. It's quite murky, and I think it's murky for a reason. But this morning during meditation, actually, I was sitting there and various thoughts are going through my head, various sensations, experiences, and I sort of had an insight about something. I even forget what it was now, but I was like, oh, you do that when you're trying to get this. And it was a very clear voice. And just kind of was there for a second. And then another voice said, when did you notice that? And then a part of me responded, yesterday. And then I sort of felt a little bit sleepy, and I almost forgot about the whole thing. It was this really funny interplay within my being that, I can't explain all the tendrils of. But then I sort of remembered it like a dream just on the edge of your horizon when you wake up in the morning. And I was like, oh, I totally just almost ignoranced that. I almost just like obfuscated. I like that word, kind of like to muddy the water of it. I almost obfuscated me calling myself out on something. And I think my hunch is we're all up to that more than we think we are. There are slight ways we are watching these games we're playing, and we're just kind of like, oh, I'll get to it later. Oh, no, that's not the reason. Oh, it's not what you think it is. It's fine. It's kind of this soft, oozy kind of feeling, rather than something that says, no. I see that. And so a motif we've been having, I think, in talking about the mirror and all these beings and visioning and imagining, I think that that murkiness of, I don't know why I keep pointing here, it's not here, this wisdom can be really just likened to seeing something, to seeing what we oftentimes just choose not to see, just perceiving it clearly, not needing to do anything else or bring out a big sword and chop it in half, which can be common in kind of Zen imagery, but really to spend time with something and just give rise to the willingness to look at it. So that is what I had to offer tonight, and we have about 15 minutes left for discussion. Anyone feel anything bopping around? Yes. Is that Daniel?
Yes. One of the most interesting parts of the wheel for me is the human realm. Like, it's the piece that seems to be like all the others are very archetypal. Like, in my mind I can think of, oh yes, this is the extreme of pleasure, this is the extreme of fighting, this is the extreme of pain. But it's like the human realm is like, this is just what we are supposedly experiencing all the time. Like, how is that an archetype of anything? Like, if anything, that's just like what's going on. Like, to me, it's like the one piece that doesn't really fit. And when I was thinking about just now, it almost is like a fractal type thing, because within that human realm is the mirror, and then inside of that mirror, the human realm is inside the mirror. And it was just it's like I couldn't figure out like where it sits on the wheel, especially if you're thinking of this in terms of like psychological like places, because it's like the human realm is like the realm that the other ones, at least the way that I think of myself as a human, spread out.
I want to speak to that. That's a really fun question. The human realm is, unique in this situation too, in that it's interesting, there's a Buddha in every realm, right? But it's said to be that the most auspicious realm to practice is the human realm. And what the main quality of the human realm is practicality. Practicality, which is interesting because that can become practicality to satisfying, doing everything I can to satisfy my sensate desires, i.e. Consumerism, right? Or it can be the practicality of the Four Noble Truths. So it's this really interesting hinge point that it's neither positive or negative, but in there, this simple turning towards practicality, what we can control, kind of a steady, measured movement towards things, that can be either harnessed, often in these images. If you go do a Google search of the wheel, you'll see the majority of people in the human realm are doing various activities, and just a few of them are sitting around some kind of guru, some kind of teacher. And so the kind of exhortation you might read when you're hearing this is, or when you might see when you're reading more about this, is they say, oh yes, but you're so lucky to be born in the human realm, but make sure you don't squander it, because so many people will have the opportunity to totally invert the suffering of their life and have it become the power of their vow and awakening, and many people will miss that opportunity.
And then the other thing is like the severity of Yama. I think I have seen other imagery like that from Tibetan Buddhism, and yeah, I think it speaks to what you're talking about, how to wake up. It's like there's this like imagery of like not being complacent. It's like, remember that your life is limited. Like you don't don't ever forget that your time will end. You know, make use of every moment. It's like it's very easy to kind of like just start going along and be like, doo-doo-doo-doo. But then every so often you just like stare into the mirror and you're like, oh yeah, you know, this is something that is very precious and rare.
Yeah.
And I take it for granted so easily. So I think that the severity of that is useful, and that it's kind of like an alarm clock to like say, hey, you know, don't forget.
Yeah. At the end of every day of retreat, actually in monasteries in Japan as well as at Buddha-ai Temple, the retreat leader will go outside and hit the wooden sounding block and then open up the door and kind of, I like to keep it cracked a little bit so the cold air blows in and kind of like, I don't know, gets everyone really in their body. And then this chant is sounded very loudly and kind of piercingly that great is the matter of birth and death, day and night go quickly passing by. Each one of you, wake up, don't waste this life. And then the bell's rung and everyone's knees are hurting at that point. Anywho, just what you're saying, that kind of attend to this.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Genjo, can you speak to the Buddha in each of the realms? Because I think sort of the first half of this class is sort of thinking about like, okay, yes, and I'm in this yes and headspace right now, and then I think when you said like, and there's this Buddha in each of the realms, and it's sort of we started to go somewhere with like to turn to them or to show them, but I'm stuck on like to get out of that realm, to lessen the suffering of that realm, to what end? What is the Buddha doing in those realms? So if you could say a few.
The Buddhas are responding skillfully to the mind, heart qualities of the beings in those realms. So, I don't know, Ejo actually just gave this past Sunday the most famous story of that, where children are playing in a burning house, and the Buddha or some wise person is in there and like, get out, the house is burning, and they're like, we're having a blast, and don't leave the house. And so he knows they want to have fun and enjoy things. And so he says, oh, children, outside there are these beautiful carts you like to play in. There's one for each of you. Please come out and enjoy them. And they say, oh boy, and they run outside and they escape from the burning house. So there's a sense right, you can see there's responding. It's not like kind of the truth, which he said right away, but they ignored it. And so one common way that's talked about in the human realm is teachers will be like, you want bliss and joy? Great, we'll give it to you. And then you get people on the hook, and then you're like, okay, you gotta look at your suffering. That the path changes as people's proclivities change. So that's kind of an overall framework. And within each realm, the Buddha is holding a different instrument, a different thing that kind of signals what they're up to, basically. And I don't think I know all of them. This one's different from your guys's. I'll just say it out loud. The Ashura Realm is kind of, fighting spirits realm. He's holding a sword. And the idea is they're kind of wisdom combat-y element situation going on. So he's like, okay, I'll play your wisdom sword game. And so cutting through with kind of argumentation and teachings that are a little more combative. And then in the animal realm, he's holding a book. Kind of like you need to culture up a bit. There are delights that are much more important and satisfying and more beautiful than this one. If you look into those will lead you out of the animal realm. In the heavenly beings realm, he's holding a guitar or a zither. I'm not sure what it is. And the idea is that they're quite offended by anything that's ugly or difficult or beautiful. So things are said in a very sweet way to help remind them of impermanence, because that's the only way they'll kind of receive that. And then I'm not sure what are in all of the other realms. I think there's an empty bowl in the human realm, and that's the idea of becoming a monastic and practicing the Dharma in that way. And then I'm not sure in the Hell Realm or another one. Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking, so I'm thinking of it as the Buddha being present to sort of, in what I think is Daniel says, like in a fractal kind of way of like reflect back on this sort of either the truths or the Dharma, not so much to get out of that realm, do you know what I mean? Like, he's sort of like, you're in this realm, let me speak to you in the way that you understand, as opposed to, here's how you get out of this realm.
I think it's both of those. Like, for instance, the animal realm is very much a signal to get out of the animal realm. I would guess the Hell Realm is too. And that goes into the idea that the human realm is the best place to practice. That it's very difficult if your mind and heart are just bent on filling your base desires. You're not gonna start. You're very unlikely to be doing this reflective work, basically. Or we could even say many animals are basically. I don't think all of them. I think my cat might be able to get up to some of these, but unable to do these kind of reflective qualities of mind that'll make your life much better, basically. So I think there's an element of both of those, but I think in the human realm, it's actually pointing like more directly towards the teachings of the Buddha rather than trying to go to any other realm, because that's the most auspicious place where you can attend to suffering. Yeah, does that get it? Does it feel, my question for you is, does it feel like it strikes in daily experience? Or can it? Can you imagine that?
Yeah, I definitely have those waves of reflection to be like, oh, I just ate a box of Girl Scout cookies. That's a very animal realm I just experienced. You know what I mean? Just those feelings. But to what end? I think like they pass and I move on. And so like impermanence like makes all the sense. But I'm also like, and to what end? Like, yes, I recognized I had that and it was fleeting, and I'll have other things and they're fleeting. So just trying to figure out, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. What I would say to that is one time, Ejo, very early on when I was practicing here, 10 years ago, he said, the world of suffering never changes. And I just looked at him like so broken. And I was like, what do you mean? And he looked at me and he was like, well, it does change, but not how you think it does. And I was actually thinking more about your question in a way that I don't really have a good technical way to understand what is happening here, especially because it sort of looks like it's right? It doesn't say to bring about happiness. It says to bring about reduction of suffering. But for me, in my own words, into what end? To live in a place, let's say, in the human realm, with the ability to reflect, like we've been using that language, a kind of reflection, opens up a kind of interiority to my being, of kind of profound loneliness that ends up being a beautiful gate to everyone. And I think that for me is pointing out what can be possible if we're living with this kind of a framework at our heart and meeting beings like this and using compassion and wisdom and generosity to meet the difficulties of the world, both with other people, like how it can become a balm of helping someone in pain. That you get these skills that just open everything. And it doesn't mean that pain disappears. It actually, I would say, like you become more willing to jump into the hell realm with someone, which is profoundly satisfying in a way. I don't know, one of my favorite lines from Harry Potter, he says something like, my parents both knew that it was different to be dragged into the arena or to walk in with my head held high. And in that sense, I think pointing at this, was it to live a life with sincerity and a kind of noble life to meet difficulty and help beings with that? I think that's what we start talking about when this teaching sort of comes to its point about how we can live.
Can I just quickly say something to that?
Daniel?
When she was saying
Yeah.
asking the question why, like to me, like that is so essentially human realm. Like I feel like the human realm provides the platform for that question to arise. It's like that's the place which the suffering is not too much, the pleasure is not too much. You know, our base desires are not too much. So we can sit here and so why is this all happening? And that's like so human to me to like be able to have that question come up, and then for the exploration to lead to these kinds of teachings, like I feel like to me, that's like the benefit of the human realm. It's like being able to say why.
Definitely part of it. Maybe we have time for one more quick question or comment if someone has something. Okay, I think we'll call it there for tonight. And once again, the homework, I think, is to discern a realm you are in and do your best to directly look at the belly of that being, which you are, and then be the Buddha, which you are, and offer what that being is really looking for in that moment. Thank you. We'll close with the Pali refuges. Buddha